Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Healing Outside the Box. We're up to episode 181, and today I thought I would do a frequently asked questions episode. So I gathered up a few questions that I've been asked, and I'm going to attempt to give you my best answer based on the current science, mixed in with my opinion on the subject. But first, I want to add a bit of information about last week's episode. Last week I told you my story about the hoops that I had to jump through to get a medical marijuana card in Massachusetts. And then I related my experience at the medical marijuana dispensary here in Salem, Massachusetts. What I failed to mention, unintentionally, is this. You should talk to your physician or other healthcare professional before you attempt to get any medical marijuana for a chronic condition. If you happen to have a chronic condition that's made up or fake news, then it doesn't matter. But if you do have a chronic condition, there is a possibility that you could do harm to yourself if you get the wrong type of medical marijuana. In my particular case, I have a serious neuromuscular disease, which leaves me with only 16% of normal lung capacity. When I went to the medical marijuana dispensary for the first time and told them I wanted something to help me go to sleep, they unintentionally recommended a type of medical marijuana that suppresses your breathing while you sleep. Now that's a very bad idea for someone in chronic respiratory failure, as I am. So, there are a lot of kinks in this medical marijuana system here in Massachusetts. And please don't assume that the medical marijuana card doctor knows what he's doing when it comes to your specific medical condition. So if you have a chronic disease such as emphysema, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, cystic fibrosis, COPD, or even MS, you should probably consult your personal medical professional before you take any of this stuff. It's not safe to assume that the dispensary knows anything about your specific medical condition. I also have a follow-up story to my series on Roundup and our food supply. I had this particularly weird experience with Roundup myself. I happened to be sitting in my little flower garden, admiring my beautiful flowers. I was taking in the lovely flowers, the sunshine, and the chirpy birds, when up comes a groundskeeper holding a tank. Almost never a good thing, and he started spraying something on my garden. I said, "What is that?" He said, "Roundup." He could have easily said sarin gas. Same difference as far as I'm concerned. Not to mention the fact that he was spraying it 5 feet from where I was sitting, and I didn't have the luxury of a face mask. I said to him, "Stop. I don't want you to spray Roundup on my flowers." And for some reason, he wanted to argue with me. He said, "I'm only spraying it on the weeds." He was in my flower garden, literally spraying Roundup on petunias. Probably on me as well, although I don't know how far the spray travels. But again, I was 5 feet from him. I was trying to act mean and aggressive, coming at him with all of my 118 pounds and, oh yes, my 200-pound wheelchair. He finally backed off and stopped spraying. I'm not sure I would have run him over, but thank God we didn't need to find out. My point here is this. If we're going to be this casual about a known toxin and a probable carcinogen, I think we should learn to live with the dandelions. Having survived my first post-traumatic lawn poisoning experience, I'm here to live another day and to advise you to please not spray your garden with Roundup or any other weed killer. Your children and your pets will thank you. Now back to the Q&A. Here's question number 1. What exercises are best to lose weight? Now, although most experts would tell you that any safe exercise is a good thing, some exercises are better than others if you want to take off those pounds. And of course the summer is the best time to do that. We generally put exercise into 2 categories. There's aerobic and there's strengthening. Aerobic exercises, generally speaking, raise your heart rate and make you sweat. These types of exercises will result in weight loss on the scale, which, let's face it, most of us want. The best of these is jogging or similar exercises, but almost any exercise that gets your heart pumping will do the trick. Trampoline, jazzercise, bicycling, stair climbing, dance exercises of any kind, rapid walking, and sports like soccer. They are all in this category. Swimming is an exercise that I would put in this category, although it doesn't make you sweat, and here's the reason. The water temperature is cooler than your body temperature, which is about 98 degrees. This means that you're not going to sweat until you get out of the water. Swimming may not be the best exercise to lose pounds, but it is an excellent exercise for your heart and you will pick up muscle mass. The reason why increased muscle mass is a good thing is because muscle burns calories much better than fat tissue. In other words, if you swim or engage in exercise where you increase your muscle mass, you will burn more calories while you're sitting down, and that's because you have more muscle mass. And while we're on the subject of muscle mass, strength building exercise such as lifting weights will increase your muscle mass and basically do the same thing. You'll burn more calories at rest. You don't lose weight on the scale when you're lifting weights because muscle mass is denser or heavier than fat. But you'll burn more calories and you'll look fit if you have a good amount of lean body mass. Question number 2. What is a normal blood sugar? Well, this question depends on a couple of factors. First of all, it depends on whether or not your doctor has strict rules about what is normal. Your doctor's opinion may differ from others on what sugar is borderline and what sugar results in a diagnosis of diabetes. Secondly, it would also depend on whether or not you already have diabetes. Most physicians give more leeway with their patients who already have diabetes. I'm not in total agreement with that because it leads to the worsening of diabetes and therefore the symptoms of long-term diabetes, but that's basically the way it is. You will find some physicians who insist on values for healthy people whether or not the patient has diabetes already. In other words, they have stricter guidelines and the numbers are the same. Let's take a look at the numbers. For fasting blood sugar, 65 to 100 is considered normal. Most physicians would also accept fasting sugars of up to 110. If you're not fasting, in other words, if you've eaten during the day, the numbers that are considered within the normal range are about 100 to 140. You may also see 160 as a normal upper limit. In people who already have diabetes, you may see some physicians accepting 180 as the upper limit. My personal opinion is that the numbers should be the same, because we're looking for prevention of the side effects from diabetes. Now, you will hear hemoglobin A1C mentioned on TV ads for diabetic meds. This is a measure of your sugar that is averaged over the last 90 days. You'll hear this called glycosylated hemoglobin. The levels that your physician will look for are about 4.3 to 6.1. Now, all pregnant women will have a glucose tolerance test at about 24 weeks gestation. The numbers that are considered normal for this GTT will vary from test to test, but basically everyone's sugar will spike at 2 hours. What your physician will watch for is how much time it takes for your blood sugar to return to normal. In pregnant women, abnormally high sugars will be treated aggressively. By the way, symptoms of high blood sugar include increased thirst, frequent urination, extreme fatigue, blurred vision, weight loss, trouble concentrating, and severe headaches. Symptoms of low blood sugar include clamminess, shakiness, rapid heartbeat, and anxiety. I discussed this in further detail in episode 152. and I'll give you a link to that in the show notes. Question number 3 is this: what is the best diet for my heart? Whenever someone is asked, what is the best diet for XYZ, you'll usually get someone's opinion based on how they interpret the science that is out there. If we're talking about weight loss, you'll get all sorts of answers. But when it comes to reducing risk of heart disease, most experts will tell you that the American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association, and the Zone Diet can succeed in doing that if those diets result in weight loss. More and more functional medicine people may disagree with that, but that's the mainstream philosophy. Now I'm sure you're saying, but Jean, I thought you said there are all kinds of ways to lose weight. Well, yes, there are. But if you want to lose weight because your cholesterol is high, or you have a family history of heart disease, you don't want to choose one of those high-protein diets made popular by Atkins originally. And that's because these diets are high in fat, particularly saturated fat, and of course cholesterol. I once saw a patient who had been on the Atkins diet, and I was asked to see this guy because his cholesterol shot up 80 points, and his doctor couldn't figure out what was going on. The Atkins diet is what was going on. The ADA and AHA diets, as well as the Zone diet, are what we call 30-40-30 diets. In other words, 30% of the calories come from protein, 40% of the calories come from carbohydrate, and 30% of the calories come from fat. And believe it or not, 30% fat is considered a low-fat diet. More recently, as I said, most health professionals will recommend a Mediterranean diet or a meat-free diet for people who want to prevent heart disease. I have plenty of episodes on these two diets, and I'll link a few in the show notes. Question number 4. What oil should I be buying? The specific answer to that question depends on what you're planning to do with the oil. You will see extra virgin olive oil used in a lot of cooking shows because the chefs love the flavor. But some of the current research suggests that you may not want to burn these oils because they have a lower smoke point than some of the other oils. The smoke point is the temperature at which they start to smoke. In that smoke point varies from oil to oil. With some fats, like butter, you will see some chefs clarify the butter before frying because that takes out the milk solids that tend to burn when you're pan frying. The way you can manage that, if you like olive oil, is to not turn the heat up too high. The more raw or unprocessed the oil, the more it may tend to burn. I use an olive oil when I saute onions and garlic, as most people do, but I only saute the onions for a couple of minutes and the garlic for maybe 30 to 60 seconds before adding another liquid. If you're frying for longer periods of time and you're interested in knowing about this, you may want an oil with a higher smoke point. I'll give you the list in the show notes. So why should we worry about smoke points? Well, when a raw oil, or those unprocessed oils with a lot of flavor, starts to smoke, the composition changes, and that's not a good thing. If you heat some of these oils past their smoke point, the fat starts to break down. And when that happens, substances called free radicals start to form. And lots of free radicals increase your risk of getting cancer. Now, as for the baking oils, sunflower and grapeseed oil have higher smoke points. Now, canola oil does as well, but I strongly suggest that you get organic if you're going with canola oil. I don't recommend soybean oil or corn oil unless you can really trust the source and get organic. Question number 5. What vitamins should I take? Once again, this is one of those, well, it depends. The reason I say it depends for many of these questions is because there's no specific answer for all cases and all people. It used to be the case that physicians would say, as long as you're eating healthy, you shouldn't need to take vitamins. That advice has generally changed now. because we don't have a healthy food supply in this country. Also, from many industrial food items, which is a lot, vitamins and minerals have been stripped out or did not get taken up by the plant because of depleted soil. And if the soil itself is depleted of healthy bacteria, then the plant can't take up all those good substances that the healthy bacteria make. Having said that, there are some general rules of thumb. A person that is unable to eat a variety of healthy foods for any reason should probably take a multivite and perhaps minerals with iron as well. Also, probiotics may be a good idea, especially if you're suffering from any type of chronic GI problem. Vitamin B12 injections are sometimes warranted if the person is eating poorly for any reason, or is a vegan with a low B12 level, or an elderly person with a tested low B12. Chronically ill and elderly people sometimes don't have enough of that intrinsic factor in their stomach that creates the active B12 from the inactive B12 that is present in food. So you need to take in B12, but you also need that intrinsic factor in your stomach to make the B12 work. Now I want to mention something about vitamin C. If someone happens to be taking megadoses of vitamin C and then suddenly stops taking them, they may end up with a vitamin C deficiency and, yes, even symptoms of scurvy. This is because their kidneys are so accustomed to dumping vitamin C into the urine that they keep dumping the vitamin C after you've stopped taking it. Our bodies don't like deficiencies of any essential vitamin or mineral. They also don't like toxic levels of some vitamins. Fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, and E fall into this category. You should certainly consult with your physician or other healthcare professional regarding any questions when it comes to vitamins that specifically pertain to you. Okay, so I've tried to give you the answers to these frequently asked questions, but I know that there are more questions out there, and I'd love to do this again with your questions. So feel free to contact me either in the comment section or in the contact page on my website, and I'll give you a link to that in the show notes as well. But that's basically healingoutsidethebox.com, which brings up the home page, and then click Contact. I believe that's all I have for you today. Be well, and stay tuned next week for another episode of Healing Outside the Box.